Think about it like this. Humanity built two engines. One was an engine of structure. This was the engine of how. You know, how to record things, how to build, how to control. It built a world. But there was another engine, an engine of intuition, and it dreamt of a world. This was the engine of why. Why we connect, why we feel, why we even exist. For thousands of years, these two engines just ran apart from each other, both of them incomplete. This is the story of that great shell of knowledge, the heart that was hidden deep inside it, and the long, long road to finally bringing them together.
You know, for most of human history, our knowledge was, well, kind of passive. It was a story, a map, a set of laws, something you'd read, something you'd look up. But then something fundamental shifted. The archive, our collection of how-to knowledge, it learned to act. This is the story of that leap, of how abstract ideas turned into a physical, world-altering force, a mechanical hand that literally started to reshape the planet in its own image. So, our story really kicks off not with a bang, but with a press. See, before the 15th century, you could store knowledge, sure, but copying it was a massive headache. Every single manuscript was precious, and every time a scribe copied one by hand, tiny ears could creep in. But that was all about to change in a very big way. With Gutenberg's printing press, the shell of knowledge suddenly learned how to make perfect, identical copies of itself, and on a massive scale. All at once, information wasn't just for the wealthy elite locked away in monasteries. Nope. Books, diagrams, scientific charts, they could now spread across Europe with unbelievable speed and accuracy. And this flood of replicated knowledge, it poured gasoline on the fires of the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the scientific revolution. It was setting the stage for the next great leap.
But here's something that's absolutely crucial to understand. Even with this incredible new superpower of replication, knowledge was still, well, it was still trapped. It lived in books, on paper. It could absolutely inform you. It could inspire you, but it couldn't pick up a hammer. It could describe the laws of physics perfectly, but it couldn't move a single stone all by itself. It was a brilliant but ultimately passive archive.
And then it happened. The shell's abstract knowledge of how, all that physics, all that engineering, all the math that had been so carefully collected and printed and spread around, it was finally translated into actual physical machines. And this, right here, is where the world we know today really begins to take shape.
This is the critical leap. The Industrial Revolution wasn't just about a few new gadgets. It was the moment that the abstract science stored in the shell became raw physical power. The archive literally broke free from the page, put on a boiler suit, and started building a whole new world.
And look, these inventions weren't just tools. They were the shell's logic made physical. The steam engine? That's thermodynamics in iron and steel. The power loom? That's the logic of pure efficiency replacing the natural, human rhythm of a weaver. And the locomotive? Well, that was the shell physically redrawing the map, connecting mines to factories to ports, all in service of its core mission: efficiency, profit, and control. And this logic was incredibly powerful, but it was also incredibly blind. It only ever asked, how? How can we make more of this? How can we do it faster? It never stopped to ask why or at what cost. And that led to massive, sprawling cities choked with smoke, incredibly dangerous workplaces, and the brutal exploitation of the most vulnerable people, especially children. All of it justified in the name of progress. It's a question we're still grappling with today, isn't it? What's the human cost of our relentless drive for efficiency?
What's really chilling is how the system justified its own cruelty, with its own cold logic. Human life wasn't measured in terms of happiness or well-being. No, it was measured in pure economic utility. Children weren't seen as children. They were seen as practical, small-handed components in a much larger industrial machine. This was the shell, acting without a conscience.
Okay, but while the shell was busy building this new mechanical world, our other engine, the heart, the engine of intuition, of emotion, of connection, it had a profoundly different reaction. It looked at this new world of machines and it just screamed.
And that scream took the form of the Romantic movement. Now, this was not just some quaint trend in art and poetry. No way. This was a visceral, passionate rebellion against the cold, mechanical logic of the shell. It was a declaration that emotion mattered more than reason, that your inner world was more real than the objective facts of a factory, and that some things in this world have a value that you just can't put a price on.
The Romantics really saw the world in these stark opposing terms. On one side, you had the shell's world, controlled, predictable, mechanical, basically the factory. The heart's vision was the exact opposite. Artists like J.M.W. Turner, they painted nature not as some peaceful, pretty landscape, but as the sublime, a powerful, terrifying, uncontrollable force. Think of a violent storm at sea or a massive mountain range that just completely dwarfs you. This was a direct challenge to the machine. It was a way of screaming, "This is true power, not your pathetic pistons and gears."
And the poet William Blake just captured this critique perfectly. He looked at the factories mushrooming across England, and he saw something genuinely demonic. For him, these dark satanic mills weren't just polluting the air, they were corrupting the human spirit itself. They were forging what he called mind-forged manacles, trapping people's very souls in a new kind of logical prison.
So here we are. We've got this collision of two massive forces. On one side, you've got the shell, now a huge industrial and political system physically remaking the entire world. And on the other side, you've got the heart, crying out in rebellion, armed with poetry, art, and this profound sense of spiritual violation. So what happens when these two collide?
So think about that for a second. The shell, this new industrial engine, is suddenly facing a critique based on beauty, spirit, and human feeling. It's being told that it's spiritually corrupt, that it's destroying the sublime power of nature. How could a system built on pure, measurable logic possibly even begin to respond to something like that? The simple answer is, it didn't. It just didn't respond. The system's logic simply was not equipped to understand arguments it couldn't measure. The cries of the heart, the poetry of Blake, the paintings of Turner, to the system, that was all just noise. It was irrational, inefficient, and totally irrelevant to the engine of progress. It's a really chilling thought that a system or an algorithm can only respond to the inputs it's designed to understand. Anything outside that logic is, well, it's just invisible.
And so the two engines were now further apart than they had ever been. The shell had become this powerful, blind actor, reshaping the physical world based on its own internal rules, completely and utterly deaf to the human cost. And the heart, it was left just crying out into a void. For any change to actually happen, reformers had to give up the language of the heart and learn to speak the shell's language, the language of data, statistics, and official reports.
So the shell of knowledge just grew stronger, its logic becoming more and more complex. And the heart of humanity, it beat louder, its wisdom more urgent than ever. But the bridge that was needed to connect them, it hadn't been built yet. The archive was still missing its why, the dream was missing its how. The two kin, still strangers to one another, just continued on their separate paths, not yet knowing they were both part of the very same whole.